Welcome to NTD News Today. Here are today's top stories. The Trump administration announcing a deal with Pfizer to lower drug prices and a direct-to-consumer website for Americans to buy drugs. We have the details. President Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth join a rare gathering of military commanders. We look at what they told America's top generals and admirals. President Trump says he's giving Hamas terrorists only a few days to accept his Gaza peace plan. The warning from the president this morning. The U.S. government is on track for a shutdown tonight at midnight after a White House meeting failed to get Democrats on board. We have the latest.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Today is Tuesday, September 30th. I'm Victoria White. President Trump just announced a direct-to-consumer website for Americans to buy drugs. The White House has dubbed the initiative Trump RX. Trump also announced a deal with Pfizer that would see the drug maker lower prices on multiple products. Here's the president.
For many years, Americans have paid the highest prices anywhere in the world for prescription drugs. They paid far more, 10 times, 13 times, 15 times more than other countries for the exact same product. A major reason is that the American consumers have been subsidizing research and development costs for the entire planet. They put all of that on us, and yet they were the beneficiaries too. So it's being changed. So it's something. That's why I signed an executive order combating this practice, and we signed it very happily a little while ago. Today, Pfizer is committing, as will other drug companies as we go through the weeks. But Pfizer is truly one of the biggest in the world and one of the greatest in the world. Today, Pfizer is committing to offer all of their prescription medications to Medicaid, and it will be at the most favored nation's prices. It's going to have a huge impact on bringing Medicaid costs down. Like nothing else.
President Trump has demanded that drug makers cut prices. He gave pharmaceutical companies until yesterday, September 29th, to respond to an executive order. It requires drug makers to match the lowest price offered in other developed nations. Pfizer is the first manufacturer to reach an agreement. As for the new website, Trump RX would allow patients to pay cash for certain drugs at a discount negotiated by the administration. Two federal agencies have determined that the Minnesota Department of Education and the Minnesota State High School League violated Title IX by allowing transgender athletes to compete in girls' sports. The joint finding comes from the Departments of Education and Health and Human Services. It concludes that over the course of several years, Minnesota allowed male athletes to compete on several girls' sports teams, including lacrosse, track and field, and volleyball. The federal departments conducted a 2-month-long investigation into state policies. The state and its education agencies have 10 days to amend their policies to comply with Title IX and President Trump's Keeping Men Out of Women's Sports executive order. The Trump administration says it's putting an end to political correctness in the military. Here's President Trump addressing the nation's top generals and admirals from around the world in Quantico, Virginia.
The apparatus of our country was not set up for merit. It was set up for political correctness. And you can never be great if you're going to do that. And we're going to be greater than we ever were before. We're bringing back a focus on fitness, ability, character, and strength. And that's because the purposes of American military is not to protect anyone's feelings. It's to protect our republic. And it's the republic that we dearly love. It's to protect our country. We will not be politically correct when it comes to defending American freedom. And we will be a fighting and winning machine. We want to fight. We want to win. And we want to fight as little as possible.
Trump outlined plans for the military, including a $1 trillion budget in 2026, the most in the nation's history, building the first ever sixth-generation fighter jet, expanding the U.S. Navy by at least 19 ships next year, and raising the pay of every service member by 3.8%. The president promised to military leaders that he has their back 100% and they can count on him to keep the US out of wars. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth also had a strong message to military leaders.
Standards must be uniform, gender neutral, and high. If not, they're not standards. They're just suggestions. Suggestions that get our sons and daughters killed. When it comes to combat arms units, and there are many different stripes across our joint force, the era of politically correct, overly sensitive, don't hurt anyone's feelings leadership ends right now.
The Secretary said that for too long the military promoted leaders for the wrong reason, based on their race, gender and other so-called historic firsts, but that ends with the Trump administration. Hegseth criticised fat troops and generals, saying they're unacceptable and create a bad look. He said that from now on, service members will have to meet height and weight requirements and take fitness tests twice a year. The Secretary also said no to beards, long hair and superficial individual expressions. Hegseth had a message to military leaders. Those who disagree with the new policies should resign. President Trump says he's giving Hamas terrorists only a few days to accept his Gaza peace plan. That's the 20-point plan he announced yesterday to end the fighting in the enclave.
We're going to do about 3 or 4 days. We'll see how it is. All of the Arab countries are signed up. The Muslim countries are all signed up. Israel's all signed up. We're just waiting for Hamas. And Hamas is either going to be doing it or not. And if it's not, it's going to be a very sad end.
Trump added that the main points for Hamas are to give back all remaining hostages and to stop the fighting. But the president warned that if Hamas doesn't agree, then the US will let Israel continue its military campaign in Gaza. Israel has long said it wants to completely eradicate Hamas. Trump said that Israel's military killed 25,000 Hamas fighters since the October 7th attacks. The president also highlighted that Hamas leadership has been eliminated 3 times since then. Reactions are pouring in from around the world after President Trump unveiled his Gaza peace plan. Arab states, Palestinians and hostage families are responding to the proposal. Let's take a look.
8 Arab and Muslim countries have welcomed President Trump's announcement of a proposal to end the war in Gaza, including Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Turkey. But while supportive of the effort, they stopped short of fully endorsing the U.S. plan. The Palestinian Authority, which governs the West Bank, also signaled its willingness to engage. It pledged to carry out reforms required by the plan, including new elections and ending payments to families of terrorists. Israel's Prime Minister, however, expressed doubt about Palestinian leadership in its current state.
I appreciate your firm position that the PA could have no role whatsoever in Gaza without undergoing a radical and genuine transformation. It won't come as a surprise to you that the vast majority of Israelis have no faith that the PA Leopard will change its spots.
Families of hostages taken by the Hamas terrorist group also reacted with cautious optimism. Many gathered in Tel Aviv to watch Trump's announcement on their phones.
We were happy to hear that Trump saw us, that he heard us calling for ending this war and bringing all the hostages, the lives and the dead, home.
I am more optimistic, although I am still a bit afraid to be so optimistic.
The official social media account of the hostages and missing families called the present moment a historic turning point. Activists said the plan could finally bring an end to the bloody war.
It looks like finally, we have a deal to end the war, the bloody war in Gaza, and bring all our people back home. This is very, very good news.
But not everyone is welcoming the plan. The Palestinian Islamic Jihad group, an ally of Hamas, criticized the plan. The terrorist group's chief said he considered Trump and Netanyahu's announcement a recipe to blow up the region. Still, Western leaders like French President Emmanuel Macron and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni expressed optimism and urged Hamas to engage. Trump's 20-point plan calls for a ceasefire, prisoner exchanges, and a transitional governing body for Gaza. Israel's ambassador to the UN told CNN they're waiting for an answer now from Hamas.
We will be patient. We are skeptical when it comes to Hamas, but I think today Hamas is isolated.
Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff told Fox News on Monday he thinks this proposal is different from previous ones.
We have so much widespread support from all of the Gulf Coast Arab countries. We have widespread support from the Europeans.
But with Hamas silent so far, the fate of the proposal and of the hostages remains uncertain.
A tale of two states. Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry calls for federal help to tackle violent crime, while Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker pushes back against federal agents. The family of a man shot at a Dallas ICE facility last week says he has died. The shooting last Wednesday originally left one man dead and two other detainees critically wounded. Miguel Garcia Hernandez is now the second victim killed in last week's attack. Authorities say the gunman fired indiscriminately from a nearby rooftop. The 29-year-old then fatally shot himself after opening fire. The attack occurred amid increasing violence against immigration officers carrying out deportations. Authorities say the suspect hated the US government and wanted to incite terror by killing federal agents. The devastating shooting on a church at Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints chapel left a small Michigan community shattered. 2 days after the tragedy, investigators continue combing through the burned-out building for evidence and clues as to what led to the assault. Here are the details on the investigation and the attacker.
Evil. This was an evil act of violence. That's exactly what this was.
The investigation into the deadly attack that killed 4 people and left 8 others injured at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc Township, Michigan continues, with police saying everyone has been accounted for. Authorities confirm that improvised explosive devices were found at the scene by a bomb squad after discovering a suspicious item on church property. The attack started just after 10 Sunday morning. Investigators say the gunman rammed his pickup truck into the front door of the church, then began shooting at worshipers with an assault rifle before setting the building on fire. Police say the 40-year-old gunman, Thomas Jacob Sanford, an Iraq War veteran, died in a shootout with police 8 minutes after the first emergency call. And investigators say he had been arrested in the past for burglary and OWI, or operating a vehicle while intoxicated. While the motive remains under investigation, the White House says the attack appeared to be motivated by religious hatred.
Based on my conversations with the FBI director, all they know right now is this was an individual who hated people of the Mormon faith.
A city council candidate, Chris Johns, says he spoke to Sanford just days before the attack while campaigning in his neighborhood.
He asked me about, what do you think about guns? And after that, it really took a very sharp turn into, he goes, the next question was, what do you know about Mormons?
When the shooting happened at a Mormon church in Michigan, some nurses at Henry Ford Genesis Hospital were on strike. Some left the picket line and ran the short distance to the church to help first responders. Let's hear their first-hand accounts.
A lot of them really didn't recognize that they had anything until their adrenaline started to slow down. And then we noticed a lot of people had abrasions or cuts from either being pulled from a window or jumping through a window to run from the shooter.
We got into the emergency department, found the manager. She was very teary-eyed and said that she wanted our assistance. We all went in different directions, helped different people.
We're nurses. It's not a job, it's our identity. And when you feel that and you know there's an emergency, every bone in your body wants to run and help.
Louisiana says it needs help. Governor Jeff Landry is asking Washington for assistance in tackling a violent crime surge across the state. NTD's Daniel Monahan reports on that. And Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker pushing back on any federal agents in his state.
Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry announced he has formally asked for federal assistance to activate up to 1,000 Louisiana National Guard members, speaking on Fox News.
Who would not want help in combating criminals on your streets. Who does not want their communities and their cities to be safe?
Landry said there were ongoing public safety concerns regarding high crime rates throughout the state. The Republican governor says police officers are overwhelmed by the number of homicides, carjackings, and gang violence.
President Trump has amassed the best cabinet of public servants and folks who really want to fight crime, like General Bondi, Secretary Noem, FBI Director Kash Patel. These folks know how to keep Americans safe.
The National Guard soldiers are expected to supplement law enforcement in high crime areas, provide logistical and communication support, and secure critical infrastructure.
The troops are happy to come. Remember, the National Guard are citizen soldiers. They are members. They are the fabric of our communities. They're our neighbors. They're our sons. They're our daughters.
In 2024, Louisiana recorded 520 violent crimes and nearly 2,300 property crimes per 100,000 residents, rates nearly 45% and 30% higher than the national averages. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker is singing a different tune. Pritzker on Monday described Homeland Security's request for 100 troops to the state to back up ICE agents in Chicago as sowing fear, intimidation, and division among Americans. Pritzker said, quote, "With one voice, we are telling this unwarranted and unconstitutional occupation to get out of Chicago." Tensions flared last Friday outside an ICE processing facility in Broadville, Illinois. More than 200 protesters gathered near the gate in front of the facility, while dozens more crowded another entrance, chanting, "Arrest ICE, shoot ICE." Federal agents made at least 17 arrests and confiscated a gun from one rioter who was apprehended at the scene. And the Justice Department is suing Minnesota. It accuses the state and several local governments of using sanctuary policies that block immigration enforcement. Attorney General Pam Bondi says the policies defy federal law and put residents at risk. Similar lawsuits have recently been filed against New York, Los Angeles, and Boston. Bondi wrote on X Monday that the rule of law will prevail. The Attorney General says the DOJ is deploying agents to protect ICE facilities, arrest violent agitators on the spot, and bring the strongest federal charges possible. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
The superintendent of Iowa's largest school district has been stripped of his license after federal immigration agents arrested him. The Iowa Board of Educational Examiners says Ian Roberts no longer has a legal presence in the United States. Immigration officials say Roberts, a native of Guyana, entered on a student visa in 1999 and has been under a removal order since last year. Authorities say Roberts fled a traffic stop before being arrested with a loaded handgun, a knife and cash in his district-issued vehicle. School officials said they had no knowledge of his immigration status, noting that he had submitted documents verifying his eligibility to work. The school board voted yesterday to place Roberts on unpaid leave. Federal prosecutors urged a judge today to sentence Sean Combs to more than 11 years in prison. This follows the hip-hop mogul's conviction on prostitution-related charges. Prosecutors are seeking a prison term of at least 135 months. They also asked the court to fine Combs $500,000. His defense lawyers last week pushed for a 14-month sentence. A judge is due to sentence Combs during a hearing on Friday in Manhattan. Combs faces up to 20 years behind bars after a jury found him guilty on 2 counts of transporting male prostitutes across state lines. The jury acquitted Combs on the most serious counts he faced, racketeering and sex trafficking. Those charges could have landed him in prison for life. Combs pleaded not guilty to all charges and is expected to appeal his conviction. Officials say a Listeria outbreak linked to a recalled frozen pasta meal has caused 4 deaths and 19 hospitalizations in 15 states. The CDC has issued a recall for ready-to-eat pasta dishes sold at Walmart and Trader Joe's. The recalled items include Cajun-style chicken fettuccine Alfredo and market-side linguine with meatballs. Federal officers say the contaminated pasta products were made by Nate's Fine Foods. Albertsons Companies has also recalled several deli products that may contain Listeria. Consumers are urged to throw away or return recalled items and thoroughly clean containers and refrigerators. In Germany, a former aide in the European Parliament has been convicted of spying for China, passing sensitive information for years and tracking dissidents. I'm Victoria White, and this is World News. Iran's foreign minister says the United States will deport hundreds of Iranians in the coming weeks. The Trump administration has not yet confirmed the deportations. It comes as tensions remain high between the two countries. Meanwhile, the United Nations reimposed sanctions on Iran this past week over its nuclear program. Iran's state television reported that the 400 Iranians would be deported as part of a deal with the US. An official with Iran's foreign ministry reportedly said a majority had crossed into the US from Mexico illegally. President Trump has announced a new round of tariffs. Trump yesterday signed a proclamation imposing new duties on imported timber, lumber and furniture. Starting October 14th, new U.S. tariffs will hit the wood products sector, 10% on lumber and 25% on furniture, with sharper increases coming next year. In January 2026, duties on upholstered wood products will climb to 30%, and kitchen cabinets and vanities will soar to 50%, targeting imports from countries without US trade deals. The White House says the move will strengthen supply chains, boost industrial resilience, and create high-quality jobs. A Ukrainian diver wanted by Germany over his alleged involvement in the 2022 Nord Stream explosions is now detained in Poland. The blast largely severed Russian gas supplies to Europe. Russia and the West have described the explosions as an act of sabotage. No one has taken responsibility for the blasts. Ukraine has denied any role. The suspect's lawyers said he would fight against his extradition to Germany. In August, Italian police arrested another Ukrainian man suspected of coordinating the attacks. That suspect is also fighting his extradition to Germany. Turning now to a spying case. A man who worked for a prominent German lawmaker in Europe and the European Parliament was convicted today of spying for China. Here's the public prosecutor.
This has been the most serious case of Chinese espionage in Germany to date. The court found that the defendant had been working for the Chinese Secret Service in the Federal Republic of Germany for almost 20 years and had become extensively involved in Chinese intelligence efforts here in Germany.
German citizen Jiang Guo was accused of working for a Chinese intelligence service. He was suspected of repeatedly passing on information on negotiations and decisions in the EU Parliament from 2019 to 2024. He was sentenced today to 4 years and 9 months in prison. Guo also snooped on Chinese dissidents in Germany, compiling data on thousands in Europe. The court also examined links to China's persecution of Falun Gong, with witnesses describing the intimidation of families back in China. Hundreds of Falun Gong practitioners and supporters marched through downtown Toronto on Sunday. Falun Gong is a spiritual practice based on meditation and the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. The march called for an end to the Chinese regime's persecution of Falun Gong practitioners. But this isn't just a story about repression in China. It highlights the CCP's expanding reach and its attempts to export censorship and intimidation overseas. Here's a closer look.
The parade stretched for several city blocks, with participants carrying banners that read, "Stop the persecution of Falun Gong" and "End transnational repression." The procession, made up of Falun Gong practitioners and supporters, concluded outside the Chinese consulate.
Today, we gather here to call out to the Chinese Communist Party, to call out to the world. The CCP regime must be stopped now. We do not consent to these crimes, nor can we remain silent.
In 1999, the Chinese Communist Party launched a nationwide campaign to eradicate Falun Gong, fearing its widespread popularity could challenge the regime's control. Since then, adherents have been detained in prisons, labor camps, and so-called re-education camps. Yet, despite this, practitioners around the world continue to share accounts of improvement to both mind and body.
About 5 years ago, I used to be a degenerate drug addict thief, and because of Falun Gong, I actually became sober and changed my life completely.
And this practice is peaceful and it's good, and it promotes harmony in society, harmony in the family, harmony within the person's own heart. And so it doesn't even qualify, nothing qualifies for persecution.
According to practitioners, Falun Gong brings peace and harmony to individuals and families. Yet the Chinese regime has continued its persecution and even extended it overseas.
They try to influence people even all over the world using transnational repression. By silencing voices here in Canada, they keep the persecution going on in China. And the Chinese Communist Party has committed these horrific crimes against Falun Gong practitioners, and their top priority is to cover up these crimes.
We're on Canadian soil, we're free to practice. When people who are Canadian citizens are being persecuted from a foreign government, a foreign entity, that's wrong on every level.
I just hope, the right thing is done and that stops, because that's terrible.
At the rally, participants urged Canadian and international authorities to act, framing the campaign as both a grave human rights violation and a worldwide fight for justice.
For 26 years of persecution, Falun Gong practitioners have carried these values around the world. We are engaged in a battle between good and evil, and we will succeed. We will win.
NTD News, Canada.
More than 70% of US electronic imports are tested in labs in China before reaching America. The FCC is taking action to close this critical US security loophole.
Last week, the Federal Communications Commission refused to grant 4 Chinese labs the qualifications to review and approve electronics for sale here in America. Electronics like smartphones, computers, even baby monitors must be reviewed and tested to ensure they don't pose security threats before entering the U.S. Right now, Chinese labs are handling most of this testing, covering over 70% of all electronics for sale here in America. Now, the FCC previously allowed a Huawei lab to test and review its own gear before it was imported into the U.S. Washington has warned that Huawei equipment could act as a Trojan horse for Chinese intelligence, and since May, the FCC has been working to close the security loophole. Earlier this month, it pulled the qualifications of 7 Chinese labs. Officials have been raising alarms about Chinese risks tied to Chinese-made electronics. One example is TP-Link, one of the best-selling Wi-Fi routers at Best Buy. Experts and lawmakers now urging Americans to ditch these routers, saying they could give China backdoor access to data and even allow it to disrupt U.S. communications.
Concern is the Chinese cyber operations need to come all the way from China out to their victims in the U.S., the critical infrastructure inside the U.S. And most of our cyber defenders know that when something knocks on their front digital door from China, they need to look at it very closely. But by hacking these Wi-Fi routers, they can come through the internet, emerge in our homes and our businesses, and then move onward to those targets and have a much better reputation because it looks like work from home, or it looks like the connections they would expect from their customers. So they can't block those.
Joyce says using these routers at home opens U.S. critical infrastructure to attack.
And for more exclusive China news and in-depth analysis, tune in to China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer at 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on NTD. Ukraine could receive Tomahawk cruise missiles from the US. The long-range missiles would allow deep strikes into Russian territory. Here's a closer look at what a Tomahawk missiles are and what Kiev wants with them.
Ukraine could strike deeper into Russia if the United States provides it with Tomahawk cruise missiles.
That comes after U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance said Sunday that the U.S. is considering Kiev's request for the long-range weapons to counter Russia. Damian Murphy, a senior vice president at the Center for American Progress, says the message is clear.
I think President Trump has made clear that he's frustrated with Putin, and perhaps this indication that they're willing to provide Tomahawk missiles, shows that the frustration has reached a boiling point, and they're ready to balance out the U.S. approach to the conflict and provide Ukraine with these weapons.
So why does Ukraine want these missiles now? Tomahawk missiles are long-range, precision-guided weapons typically launched from ships or submarines. They can hit targets up to 1,000 miles away, even in areas with strong air defenses. They would put Russian bases, supply hubs, airfields, and command posts within range. And Moscow warned on Monday that this would escalate the conflict. Tomahawk missiles are made by Raytheon, a division of U.S. defense and aerospace giant RTX. The U.S. plans to purchase 57 in 2026, with each costing about $1.3 million. The Pentagon is also investing in upgrades to improve the missile's guidance systems. Such costs mean the weapons aren't cheap to buy or use. Ukraine already has a variety of long-range missiles, both homemade and supplied by Western allies. Imported weapons include the European Storm Shadow cruise missile with a range of around 155 miles. Ukraine also has the US-made Army Tactical Missile System, a ground-launched ballistic missile that can hit targets up to 190 miles away. Tomahawks, with their long-range and precision guidance, would exceed the capabilities of all these weapons. Dalibor Rohak from the American Enterprise Institute says that's why Washington is still mulling whether to supply them.
If the US were indeed to supply Ukraine with Tomahawk missiles, whether or not mediated through and financed by Europeans, that would be a new development, and I think that would be a major shift in policy. What we've heard from the Vice President, though, is that it's something that the United States is contemplating, and I think we'll have to see what the decision when it's being made.
Tomahawks have been proven effective in many operations, including recent strikes on Houthi rebels in Yemen. Now, they could unlock Ukraine's potential to strike vital targets, potentially altering the conflict. Both sides will be watching Washington's decision very carefully.